here's another thing that we don't want to make false accusations here on the program, Brian. We do not want to accuse people of behavior, either unsavory behavior, possibly criminal behavior, certainly behavior that shouldn't be imitated. We don't want to do that if they're not guilty of it. But a lot of people have been saying recently they're watching these promos that poor old Tony Schiavone, is apparently being instructed to do with our friend, the Booker of the Year, Tony Khan. And these promos are now that Tony Khan, what is he? Is he the invisible? He calls it, well, one of them is the invisible hand. Is Tony's the invisible door? And Callis is the invisible hand.
I believe he now calls himself the Forbidden Door.
Oh, Tony's the Forbidden Door. And I saw that movie, Marilyn Chambers and Harry Reams.
No.
Oh, boy. Hey, now, Tony could have got me to work for AEW if I'd have known he hung around in those circles.
That was behind the Forbidden Door.
Well, regardless, so which one's invisible and which one's forbidden again? Callis is the invisible hand job. And Tony is the forbidden back door. But they're showing these things on Impact Wrestling. And I know people are now going to say, well, fuck, then it doesn't really matter because who's watching that? And you're right, but still it's in public and it's being perpetrated and circulated around the world via the interwebs. But Tony is doing heel promos now to the Impact audience, which... Can there be any difference? Isn't everybody that comprises the Impact audience also watching AEW? Because isn't it all kind of that same 700,000-800,000 people that like wrestling parody these days that's watching all those type of programs?
Well, Impact doesn't have a significant audience. I mean...
Well, no, that's what I've said. They just showed the number. They got thrown for a loop. They got bad numbers. Came out with like 38,000 instead of 140,000 or whatever, and they were all panicking, but it was a mistake. But the same 100 and something thousand people watching Impact have to be watching AEW also, don't they already?
I would think so.
Because if you're going to make a commitment to go that far down on the wrestling tree, you're going to be watching most everything, right? And so now Tony is the heel. They've sold him on this. Callis is brilliant behind the scenes because he's pushed this Mark's buttons and knows how to phrase it. And they were already fucking enamored of Olivier, old Twinkle Toes anyway. And since he and Callis are friends, this small outlaw promotion on a cable station that not a lot of people watch, Access TV, have been invited to be guest stars and or main characters on a program on TNT that 700,000 or 800,000 people watch. And in return, Tony Khan gets to go over and be a heel and do promos in Impact. It's kind of like the reverse of when Vince was a heel in Memphis. The absolute opposite, the mirror image of that. Instead of a big fucking executive going down and playing in a small territory, it's an amateur booker going and playing in a smaller territory. And it's bad. These promos are bad. And it's obvious that nobody is telling him because they're scared that they will offend him in some kind of way, because now he's fulfilling another of his childhood dreams by getting to be a character on television. But I've got to say this out loud, and then, Brian, you can discuss as you see fit. If the promos that you are doing on not just once, but on a regular basis, cause people who do not know you personally, but just are viewing that promo to either think or be absolutely sure of themselves that you are on some kind of drugs, even if you're not, don't you need to change your presentation?
You would think, and again, when AEW first started, Tony Khan was very buttoned up, skinny tie, clean shaven. neat little haircut. People thought he looked like Rick Moranis. Now he looks like a mess. And you combine those promos with the erratic booking, the bad formatting, and certainly there are a lot of people actively speculating about any use of stimulants by Tony Khan, and he seems to be running towards that. He doesn't seem to be going, maybe I should, shave or clean myself up or act like a professional or act like I own this thing, not like I paid a bunch of people to be my friends and play around with me in a hobby I always wanted to have.
But no, it's more than that. Take yourself off the air. It's doing your company no good. Is there a positive for AEW? And I'm not talking about Tony Khan never appearing on AEW television as himself ever again, although that wouldn't be a particularly bad idea on the surface of it. But I'm talking about, do not go out and do these unhinged interviews being the heel executive of another company that are causing everyone. Look at the comments on every tweet of these videos. Look at the comments on YouTube. I did. People pointed me to them. Whether they're talking about Adderall or methamphetamine or they're making cocaine jokes. It's not just the people who don't like AEW. It's a lot of people, because that's the impression you get. And that's what I'm saying. Even if everybody knows Tony Khan, and Tony Khan, if you know him personally, you know why he wouldn't take an aspirin, or he's a teetotaler or whatever. If you're creating that image and you're not doing it on purpose for a business reason, and I can't imagine what business reason they would have for wanting their owner, booker, operator to be a drug-addled speed freak on fucking television. So if people are getting that impression, take that as a cue to don't do this anymore. You're not good at it. You're coming off badly. And why is Tony Schiavone, Tony, Jim Ross, somebody that he would listen to, can you take him over to corner and say, Tony, let's look at this video together. You see how you might be coming off to people who don't live in our bubble? And maybe this is not a good idea. Can anybody talk to this fucking guy?
No, he thinks that his ideas are swell. Remember, nobody's going to write my TV but me.
Then as we'll talk about when we talk about his program, does nobody have any integrity in their own selves then and can't come out and say, what the fuck are you doing? Whether he likes it or not. Fuck. I argued with Vince. Vince is a lot harder to argue with than goddamn Tony Khan. I didn't scream at him and call him a motherfucker, but I argued points with him when I thought that he was in the wrong. And in many cases, he probably still was, but he won. But at least I said it.
A couple things, we could talk about it later, but based on the results, the ratings and other things, the questioning I've been doing for weeks now, I think is more glaring about why they would work with Impact, because it doesn't seem like there's any benefit whatsoever to AEW, but we'll talk about that later. I put on Twitter that these Tony Khan promos, he sounds like Crone Meltzer on coke. Do you remember Crone Meltzer?
No, I thought you were making that up as a knock on Uncle Dave.
No.
What are you talking about?
There was this kid who, in the, 2006, 2007, started putting up these videos. He was feuding with the internet wrestling community. And his name was Crone Meltzer. And the funny part was he could never pronounce his own name, so he would call himself Crone Metzler, but he spelled it Meltzer. Let me play you a little bit of Crone Meltzer.
You've got this on hand.
I have it pulled up here, one of his videos. There are several amazing videos. And tell me when he starts yelling if it doesn't sound like the same tone and voice as Tony Khan. Hold on, here we go.
Death Valley Driver message board. should be spelled B-O-R-E-D. Every time I get on there, that's the way I feel. I go out to give you guys my freedom of speech, tell you the breaking news about Randy Orton, and what do? I get shit on. For what? For what? Breaking the news to you? Me trying to tell you guys about what happened at ECW One Night Stand? What happened? I got all you people out there like Spunk all hating on me. How do you think that makes me feel? Huh? You don't know who I am. I am the real deal. I give you guys the news when it comes. Crone Metzler can tell you guys what's happening, when it's happening, and why it's happening. Because the internet wrestling community needs to know. We don't want to hear about some guy named Kent Jones, obviously. We want to hear about Crone Metzler, the real deal, the man who should be leading the IWC across America. You need to understand that when the time comes, I'm going to be taking over. I don't care if it's Death Valley message board or what it is. I am going to be taken over. And that, my friends, is the truth.
Tell me that's not Tony Khan.
There you go. There you go.
Tell me that's not Tony Khan.
For the normal people out there in the listening audience, I can tell you this is not new. I did this when I was a teenager. You're doing promos with your friends, and then you have the matches, whether it's the high school locker room or out in the backyard or whatever the fuck. Of course, we didn't use kendo sticks and moonsaults off fucking the roof then or whatever. We actually worked, but nevertheless, in 40 years in this business.
Oh, I thought you were going a different way. I thought you were going to say this isn't new, taking the money guy and putting him on TV to appease his ego.
Well, I'm not there yet. I'm going all the way back. It isn't new that people want to play wrestling and pretend they're wrestlers and want to be wrestlers. And used to, before the days of deregulation, it was very hard to become a professional wrestler. It was very hard to be let in to the business and smartened up. It was very hard to get a chance to get trained. And then when you did, you had people who had years and decades of experience in the business and knew what lines, especially in their territories, to step over into the ha-ha and the gaga or how to present their product or whatever. And there were obviously certain things that you would not be allowed to do. But with the last 20 years of the internet and deregulation and outlaw shows and indie shows and, hey, kids, let's put on a show, and there being no quality control whatsoever about who promotes wrestling or what kind of wrestling they promote or who can get into a wrestling school or who can train a wrestling school, as we heard earlier in the program, with the guy kicking the other guy's face in and all this other shit. All these people who, I've been seeing this for 40 years, but you didn't get to see it in public. I've seen the audition tapes that were sent in by people who wanted to be wrestlers and thought if they could cut a promo and put it on tape and send it to the WWF or whatever organization, that they could be big stars, and they don't have mirrors and they don't understand how this works. I've been seeing it through the generations, but those people were never allowed to be wrestlers. Those people were the basement bookers and the fantasy wrestlers, played with their friends, but they weren't allowed to become part of the business because of the mindset of people who do promos like that and think they're good. Now they can be. And now I'm going back where you were going, Brian, when you combine the fact that he's always wanted to do this with the fact that his father has $1 billion, they got Dixie on television in the dying years somebody ought to go back and do the timeline and figure out if they can when Dixie's parents cut TNA off for more money and when Dixie showed up on television. But it's old as the hills. You put the Angel on TV. Remember I told the story about when Buck Robley was going to open up New Orleans again, brought me down for those NWF TV tapings at St. Bernard Civic Center?
Yeah, I remember that.
And the money man was the manager that looked like Elvis that Buck Robley had met at the fucking racetrack. And I came in and sold him in 2 TVs. I came in, established Ron Powers, sold him Ron Powers his contract. Then he was going to be a heel manager. And then Buck's thing was he was going to milk him for 3 or 4 months and then turn the guy babyface so he could get some more time out of him and have the guy giving going around the poor areas of New Orleans, giving free tickets to the wrestling matches to the kids. You get the angel on television, you get the backer on TV because they wouldn't be putting money in it. Well, you know when you can. I wasn't going to get Rick Rubin on television. In those days, you could barely get Rick Rubin on the telephone.
Some things don't change.
Well, exactly. And how many television interviews have you seen with Rick Rubin ever in history? He's not a person that goes out and hogs spotlight, right? But in some cases, you could tell it was an old as the hills, as the carnies in wrestling. When you got the angel and he's always wanted to be involved in this, especially if things are going bad, get him on television, get him hooked, give him a taste of it, let him play, let him be who he's wanted to be when he did promos in the mirror, whatever.
Well, the interesting thing too is it's not AEW putting their angel on TV, which would be him putting himself on TV. It's Impact realizing they need AEW, saying, yeah, we'll do this deal and we'll put you on our TV.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's not even, But the point is, he's not a television performer. A lot of these guys aren't. You will find that that's what exposes most of the indie-rific wrestlers that are the sensations on the indies whenever they actually show up at a promotion sooner or later that has a television show. That's what exposes them. And then you find out that while a bunch of people that were going to a show, 300 people that were going to a show at a rec center somewhere in Pennsylvania, went there determined to love it if you took a shit in the ring and threw it at them. And that's how guys like Jelly Nutella get a reputation, because they're raving about the shit they saw, literally, the shit they saw taken in a rec center in Pennsylvania. But then you put it on television, and the average person who does not have the inclination to seek out the rec center in Pennsylvania just to go see Jelly Nutella turns it on because it's in his house now. It's in his living room. It's on his television. And he goes, what the fuck? That's with a lot of the indie talent. That's where they're seen through. But nevertheless, the point is, if you're not a friend of Tony Khan's and you don't want to stop him from embarrassing himself, then go ahead and let him keep doing these promos. But shouldn't somebody just say, you know what, even if you fire me, I've just got to say this. You're acting like a fucking imbecile. You make the company look like I started to say this with a straight face. You make the company look like a bunch of idiots playing around, but then again, there's their television program. But it's so unprofessional, it's so amateur, and it's another example of this is a vanity project and gratuitously to appeal only to people who like parodies of pro wrestling. But somebody needs to fucking talk to Tony and at least decaf or something. If either that or, if this is the sign of because people are saying he's turning into Herb Abrams. And then you get the still frames of Herb Abrams wide-eyed and coked up next to Tony Khan wide-eyed and in over his head. And you go, oh, maybe there's something to it. And I bet you, here's the thing, though. He's not going to, Tony, if he goes out that way, I bet you he won't even at least have the hookers.
He'll have the cheerleaders. No, but what I was going to say is, again, the dichotomy that people recognize is that when we first saw Tony Khan, again, skinny tie, pea coat, nice little haircut. Now he looks like a coked up raving lunatic. And Tony Schiavone just standing there. It's so funny.
So you want to be in a wrestling business, kid?
Oh, someone show that to his dad. Someone show his dad.
He looks like one of the boys that used to try to follow Flair around at the bar and keep up with him.